What's up guys, Jeremy at Grassroots Powsurf. Today we are going to go over a little demo on how to fix a small delamination on a board. De-lams on your board can happen when sometimes people are just sticking them in the snow, kind of like they like to do. You hit a stump, you hit a rock, it splits the tail and causes a little delamination, or maybe you're taking a toe side or a hillside turn and you hit a stump or a rock. It can cause a little bit of the p-tex to pull away from the board. The beauty of that is it saved the life of your board, because if you didn't have the p-tex base, it would just blast right through the wood and that would be unrepairable. You can't really repair waxed up wood at all. So the beauty of these p-tex bases is they're much faster, they hold wax way longer, and they're much more durable than a wood-based powsurfer. A little de-lam, pretty easy thing to fix. So a clear 2-part marine grade epoxy is the best thing to use. Something to stir it with. Maybe a couple little things to pry open where the de-lam is so that epoxy can get in there. So I use a couple screws for that. Another super helpful thing to have is a flexible board, like a 1/4 inch piece of plywood or an 1/8 inch piece of plywood. And the pro tip here is get some clear tape, wrap those blocks with the clear tape. This will keep the epoxy from sticking to these at all. And that will save you a big mess cleanup and save you the possibility of gluing the block to the board. So super important step there. You're also gonna need some clamps. These are really great hand clamps. Any type of clamp will do. You just need to be able to clamp it and let it sit for about 12 hours. You're gonna wanna set your board up in a way that you can put epoxy down in there and gravity is gonna let it go in as deep as it needs to go. To prep this, I use these little screws or something, just something that can kind of pull that away. And I'll even use my thumb and just pull it, see if it's gonna come apart anymore. If not, we're pretty well good to go. And I just kind of stick these in here just so it opens up the little de-lammed area so that the epoxy can get down in there. I'll get a few clamps ready to go. And I've got my wood blocks, a couple wood blocks. The flexible wood is much better to use because your board is 3-dimensionally contoured. This will help go with the rocker of the board and even down into the channel if needed. And I'm just mixing up just enough to fill this gap. So you're gonna wanna stir this for about a minute to get the two agents to work together. So I've kind of opened up this de-lam with the screws so that gravity can just get down in there. I'm just using the sturry to do this. You could use a razor blade or a popsicle stick. Anything to just kind of work the epoxy in there. I'll remove these pieces. You're gonna want some paper towel to clean up with because this stuff can ooze all over the place. And when I push this back in, it's gonna squeeze quite a bit of a mess out. So you wanna be ready to catch that with your paper towel. Boom. You want to clean the wet epoxy away from there as much as possible. Now I take my blocks and I'll line them up in a way that I can still get in there and clean out any more that oozes out. Go ahead and clamp that on either side. And I took good care to get a lot of the excess epoxy squoze out of there, so it's not really making a mess right now, but you're going to want to check that, because if you clean up that epoxy while it's wet, it's much easier than after it dries. So she's all clamped up and good to go. You'll let that sit 12 to 24 hours. This is a 145 Stealth Powsurfer. It's been through the ringer. It's had all sorts of dings and dangs and hit a lot of rocks and a lot of chunks. And the beauty of this p-tex base is if that were wood, those would just be chunks of wood off the board. It would be unable to be repaired. I'm gonna show you, I'm just gonna fix this. We took a rock or a log to the base there in a couple spots, and it separated it here. It looks like it's fine here, but I might just trim that with a razor blade just so it's smooth again. And then somebody smashed it down onto a rock or something, so I'm gonna clean that little spot up too. I'll take my little spacers to kind of open this up. I'm gonna kind of peel it open as much as I can. Since I'm gonna be repairing it anyway, it's okay if it de-lams a little more from me pulling on it. So if there's any pieces of wood in there that are stray, you can kind of pull those out with a razor blade. So again, this is a 2-part clear marine grade epoxy. You don't have to be too meticulous in the beginning, but you are going to want to you're going to want to clean up that excess so it doesn't dry and leave big lumps and chunks on your board. I'm just going to kind of push that goo around a little bit, let it go into its spot. I'm actually going to take this and squeeze the majority of it out. You only need just a thin film. The more you clean up right now, the less mess you're going to have after everything dries. So many times you pop up off your board after a run and you pick it up and you just stick it in the ground like that, and sometimes there's a rock or a log down there that'll ding it. Usually it's just fine, but this one took a pretty hard one, so I'm just going to clean that out the best I can. I'm just going to kind of paint it in there. Clean that up a touch. That will come back to shape and live happily ever after. There you have it. We fixed a couple of rock dingers on this board. This board is, 10 years old now, so it's been through the ringer. The beauty of that p-tex base is that it keeps things so much more durable and so much more repairable. This thing will be good to go in 12 to 24 hours, and we'll be ripping on it once again. Okay guys, we're back next day to fix up our dings here. We had a small ding on the tail here. A little bit of a de-lam and misfiguring in the very tail. So I'm going to remove the clamps and the blocks. And this is taking its shape back really well. If there's any excess epoxy that's splooged out there, I'm just going to clean it up with the razor blade a little bit. If it were sticking out a lot, or if there's a lot of goo, I'd hit it with a sander. Either a hand sander or an orbital sander, like a 220 grit, 120 grit. And I'd smooth that down, and then I just recoat with a little bit of urethane, maybe 2 coats of urethane with sanding in between the 2 coats. And this one here, kind of remove my clamps. I was pretty careful with this one. I cleaned it up really well with paper towel while the epoxy was wet, so I don't have a ton to clean up here. So let's give it a light scraping to smooth that out. Sometimes you'll get a little on the underside on the base, and that'll come off pretty easy, especially if your board's been waxed. Epoxy doesn't stick to waxed p-tex. I got a little rock ding here. It didn't actually separate or delaminate, just kind of like misshaped the p-tex, so I'm just going to shave that down so it's a little sharper and smoother. Just get it a nice smooth edge again. All right, and this old Powsurfer, over more than 10 years old now, is ready to get back out there and rip. And finishing up on this one here, clamps off, and blocks off. And again, I did a pretty good job of cleaning up any excess epoxy that had squeezed out of here, so cleanup's gonna be real easy here, just a light scrape. And that is clean. Again, if I had any epoxy that had splooged out of here and dried and was hardened, I'd hit it with some sandpaper or an orbital sander, sand that down smooth, and then recoat that section with at least 2 coats of urethane with sanding in between. And that board is good to go. Ready to rip. Hyped to get back out on that. All right guys, thanks for tuning in. If you like what you see in these videos, please like, subscribe, comment, share them with your friends. We'll keep pumping out the content. We got a lot of really good videos coming out this year. Stacks and stacks of content, some pretty incredible writing, and some just beautiful days we've had out there. So stoked to share that with you guys. I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.